Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. For today there were lots of the political news and news about the Ukrainian military support. Some of those are quite awesome, but we're gonna start this video from what is happening on the ground. And on the ground, Ukraine is just demolishing the Russian air defense systems. It is the daily routine of Ukrainian armed forces. Why our guys are doing it? Well, they're preparing for the future delivery of F-16s. They're coming very soon, I bet this month. And here in this picture you may see the Russian Tor air defense system. As I said to you, Russia loses those every day. It is happening on the south, and to strike this unit, Ukraine uses the middle-range drones, like for example Russia uses Landsats. Yeah, it looks different, but the function of the drone is the same. It's very effective, and all this picture is monitored by the surveillance drone. What is interesting about the case that the Russian crew saw the drone coming, and what they did, they just left the vehicle and run away. They understood that they cannot do anything against the drone attack. So as you can see, this air defense system, probably Tor, is no go. The similar picture happened to the other air defense system of the Russian Federation, Buk. A very precise hit by the drone. This time crew decided to stay in the vehicle. They put the full throttle and start to drive away, but it didn't help. The drone hit the moving target, which is awesome. So those drones, Ukrainian-made drones, are very capable. By the way, the Czech Republic helps Ukraine a lot with those drones because the part of the production was moved to Czech Republic. And I guess those are the drones which Ukraine used for the purpose. The name of the drone is RS. And here we see one more Buk air defense which was hit also by the drone. So it shows that definitely Ukraine is oriented to kaput all of the Russian air defense systems. As Russian military bloggers report, almost every day they lose the air defense systems in Crimea. Plus in many of the other areas of the front line, sometimes even on the territory of the Russian Federation. By the way, what is happening with approval for Ukraine to use ATACMS missiles to hit the Russian airfields? Well, today Zelensky insisted that Ukraine should have the permission to use ATACMS against the Russian military airfields, because Russia continued to use their military aviation to drop their gliding bombs, which brings severe devastation for Ukrainian positions. And you know, recently they intensified those attacks, especially in Kharkiv Oblast. So at some point our guys lost the position, even involved chance, because Russia sent reinforcements and they start to use those bombs massively. So without that permission, Ukraine will always face the threat from the Russian aviation close to the front lines. And all of the losses of Ukrainian army during the counterattacks to get and liberate the ground could be just useless, because Russia by any time may launch their aviation and demolish Ukrainian positions, after that sending more of the midwave attacks and get the ground back. So it's terrible actually that Ukraine still doesn't have that permission. Well, the White House officials after today's meeting said that negotiations are ongoing with Ukraine to give that approval. Well, it's very easy to give that approval. Somehow the White House officials hesitate to do it. However, we have the approval from the Great Britain to use their cruise missiles at the maximum range from Ukrainian border to target any sort of the Russian military airfield. A new British Prime Minister Starmer confirmed that information, and thank you United Kingdom for that. But there is one thing why Ukraine shouldn't use the Storm Shadow missiles against the Russian military airfields, and let me tell you why it's important to obtain exactly ATACMS permission. Alright, probably you remember the strike of the Storm Shadow missiles on the Russian Navy headquarters in Sevastopol. Yeah, this building was severely damaged by two of the Storm Shadow cruise missiles. Russia wasn't able to intercept it, and cruise missiles went far away actually from the Ukrainian controlled territory, so the range of those missiles is pretty much acceptable for Ukraine. But those cruise missiles will not stop the Russian military aviation. Yes, they hit very precisely, but the purpose of those missiles is to eliminate the particular narrow target, like for example building, bunker or something like that. it doesn't have the cluster munition warhead. But Ukraine needs to hit many of the airplanes at once. Yeah, on this picture those are very close, but Russia now tries to put them aside. This is kind of the old photo. For this reason, ATACMS is just perfect. It releases clusters mid-air, and those clusters just hit everything on the bottom, completely covering all of the apron and damaging all of the Russian airplanes so they're unable to fly any longer. Guys, I want to bring your attention here. You help me a lot by simply watching my videos, by pressing likes. But if you like, definitely like the job that I do, and you have the opportunity and you're willing to support me, you may also check my Patreon page. It is available in the link in the video description just below. Why is it important for me personally? Because recently I got some of the videos restricted on YouTube, some even with 18+. I know the reason why. Usually appeal, and after appeal it works fine, but appeal takes several days and videos already got its views. So basically monetization of the videos goes down, and not just I am complaining about it. There are many of the YouTubers who face the same feature. So if you want to keep me motivated with daily updates, you may support me as usual on Patreon. And there I promise to post some of the interesting news and the information that I do not post on YouTube channel. Thankfully, I still have Patreon. And by the way, we have much less sponsors on the channel. So guys, after all, I rely on you. So thank you for your kind support. Stay awesome. And the key airfield in the area for Ukraine is Voronezh-Baltimore airfield, which is located roughly 200 kilometers away from Ukrainian border. Yes, you might launch some of the Storm Shadow cruise missiles to hit it, but with just limited success, and after Russia sees that Ukraine is able to target this military airfield, they would just move majority of the airplanes elsewhere out of this range temporarily or forever. And still the range of Sukhoi 34 would be acceptable for them to operate. Yes, they might take less bombs, but still they would be able to bomb Ukrainian positions. So it should be unexpected attack by Ukrainian side and not by the Storm Shadow. The majority of the Russian airplanes should be eliminated at once, and that is what our allies are afraid of, because Russia concentrated lots of the fighter jets in this particular airfield and also in airfields nearby. So for a single Ukrainian successful attack with many of the ATACMS missiles, Russia might just lose the vast part of their aviation completely. Yes, with the help of the Western-made missiles, and Russia might see it as some sort of the step of the escalation. And the White House administration still thinks that it's better not to escalate that far. That's why I don't see the close perspective for Ukraine to obtain that permission, but finally that permission will be granted after all. Then it might happen, well, maybe even next month. You see that even strikes on the capital city of Ukraine, Kyiv, and other cities, including Children's Hospital, do not convince the White House to give that permission, unfortunately for Ukraine. I think that it's better to give that permission because, as I said to you, all of the counterattacks from Ukrainian side are just useless if Russia continue to use their aviation gliding bombs. Because if we check this update from the Institute for the Study of War, they show that Russians were able to move in Vovchansk. It is quite unexpected because Ukraine was pushing out there before, but Russia used lots of the gliding bombs according to our information, and also they sent more reinforcements to the place, couple of more brigades. So this situation should be stopped, and the only variant to stop it is to use ATACMS. Plus ATACMS will help Ukraine to fight even against the Russian missile launchers Iskanders, which potentially might target Ukrainian airfields with F-16s. By the way, we have some of the good news from Norway. They promised 7 of the airplanes to be delivered to Ukraine this year. So just from Norway alone, 7 of the airplanes. And according to the Anthony Blinken statement, Ukraine is in the process of receiving F-16s already, and Denmark plus Netherlands are in the process of delivery of those airplanes to Ukraine. The Russian propaganda at first started to say that those airplanes are red line for the West to be involved in this war because they might carry nukes or other stuff. But now they mostly say that those are basically garbage airplanes designed in 70s or something like that, totally incompatible with Sukhoi 35 or Sukhoi 57. Well, maybe, but the more F-16s are totally different airplanes compared to F-16s from 80s, let's say. They have better radars, better avionics, better equipment in general. F-16 is just like a multi-tool, like a Swiss knife, capable for any sort of the missions. Almost. Plus the weaponry was modernized gradually and they have a very long-range missiles now, capable to hit the Russian airplanes for very long distances. Plus the airplanes which Ukraine obtains have the integrated system with AWACS. So AWACS airplanes just deliver the data for the fighter jet. It means that those planes will see everything of what is happening on the front lines, all of the Russian raiders, all of the Russian fighter jets. And the important thing is to make this system work in a modern day war scenario, because this war is very intense and those fighter jets have never been used in the real fight scenario with the Russian last generation fighter jets. I consider it Sukhoi 35. Sukhoi 57 is too bad for the real combat action, but Sukhoi 35 could be a real enemy of F-16 on the front lines. Some of the analytics say that F-16s would lose, but no, if the system works fine, they'll be victorious. And also it depends on how many of the airplanes Ukraine obtains, because not just quality but also quantity matters. So we're eagerly waiting for those fighter jets to come to Ukraine. I have lots of the Russian bots saying, oh come on, F-16s are not coming, it's just a bullshit news. But believe me my friends, they are coming and coming very soon. I think that at the end of this month we're gonna see those airplanes flying, making Ukrainian skies more peaceful. And they're coming together with more of the Patriot air defense systems, because air defense should protect those airplanes as well. Well, not just Patriots were approved for Ukraine, but Patriots are the most capable air defense systems Ukraine has. So totally 5 of the Patriot systems will be delivered to Ukraine, 2 from the United States from what I understood, 1 from Germany, 1 from Romania and 1 from Netherlands. The Netherlands system is not fully a system, it has just 4 of the launchers. Netherlands collected those launchers and radars and control units from different of the countries. They'll put everything together and will send to Ukraine. So before they should settle everything, maybe even performing some sort of the maintenance, and only after that the system will be delivered to Ukraine. Well, 4 launchers is still okay. Plus, Italy will send the SAM-T air defense system to Ukraine. It's the analog of Patriot, but a little less capable, let's say, but still very capable. In addition, Ukraine will receive more of the middle-range air defense systems like NASAMS Hawk RST. And the Gepard short-range air defense systems, which are awesome against the drone strikes. Now, one of the best Russian systems which they use against Ukraine are those Zala surveillance drones or Orlan 10 or Orlan 30 surveillance drones. They may fly for around 100 miles away from the front lines, delivering the live signal of what is happening on the ground. Those are very hard to detect and shut down using, for example, Patriot or NASAMS, because basically those drones are made out of the composite materials, and Russia managed to create quite a fast reaction system. Then a single Russian commander receives the information from the drone live and also operates with the Russian Iskander ballistic missile system. So the time of the reaction is really nothing. Then they see something interesting, they immediately launch the missile. That's how they were able to target lots of the Ukrainian infrastructure the last week, eliminating at least 3 of the Ukrainian airplanes, and some of the air defense systems like S-300 has been confirmed for sure that that one was targeted. And you know, there are not many S-300 systems, Soviet-made systems left out there. Mostly they're in Russia. There are not enough missiles for them. So every time Ukraine loses something like that, it is very painful for Ukrainian army and Ukrainian air defense. For this reason, we obviously need more of the Patriot systems. Almost transparent for the radar waves. So how can Ukraine potentially kaput those drones? Well, I see just three ways how to do it. So it's already not a secret that Ukraine started to use light airplanes like Yakolev 52 to find out the drones and to hit them right from the skies. By the way, from the information I was able to find, it is not the Ukrainian Air Force. Those are just enthusiasts from the general aviation who obtained the approval from the Air Force to operate with their Yakolev 52. They painted into the military colors, and probably army gave them just a rifle to shut down the drones, and that's it. This airplane was effective against many of the drones. At least 8 of those were shut down in Odessa Oblast. And we know that the other aviation enthusiasts also started to implement this idea, flying just a light aircraft close to the drone, because drones are not fast targets, so you need to have the airplane which flies at the similar speed. With a MiG-29 or F-16, it's impossible to chase those kind of the drones because the fighter jets are damn fast. For them, the drone is like a standing target. But those airplanes are awesome, so Mustang, Spitfire or Focke-Wulf might help Ukraine to fight against the drones. But those are obviously retro. I think there are some of the new types of those airplanes which are available on the market. Maybe as a variant to use the small military airplanes Embraer's Rion 4 Tucano. I just wonder if those are equipped with some sort of the machine gun. Well, based on this photo, they definitely have those, and actually it was my idea back in 2022. Then Russia started to use the Shahed drones to strike Ukrainian infrastructure, because the cruise speed of the Shahed drone is around 130 kilometers an hour, so it's better to use the slow airplanes for that purpose. And I remember the case with our pilot Karaya. He hit the drone, the Shahed drone, but because the airplane was flying at a very high speed, by the time the missile reached the drone, the airplane was already very close and the airplane was damaged by explosion, so this guy had to eject. He targeted the Shahed drone, but at the same time lost his airplane. It is a known fact. But with a slow airplane, you just fly behind, shoot the Shahed or any sort of the drone and just fly away. The distance will be the same all the time. So I think that Ukraine should absolutely look for alternates, and there are many of the pilots who would like to perform that job, because there are lots of the pilots in Ukraine, ex-commercial pilots, general aviation pilots and also military pilots who have no airplanes to fly. And also it's much safer to fight against the Russian Shahed drones or surveillance drones compared fighting with Russian Sukhoi 35 or their air defense systems. And probably one more reason, it's kind of fun to fly a small turboprop airplane or piston engine airplane like in the Second World War to chase the Russian drones and to hit them with machine gun. So I think that the idea with the small airplanes is kind of nice. Well, at least our aviation enthusiasts showed that they might be successful against those drones, but again they cannot operate close to the front lines because Russia will obviously shut them down. But close to the front lines, Ukraine has lots of the FPV drones. For example, this video shows the successful operation of Ukrainian FPV drone against the Russian Orlan surveillance drone. They climb very high for purpose and just looking for the Russian drones. Then they see those, they fly and hit those. Because the airspeed of the modern day FPV drone is quite high to chase any sort of the Russian surveillance. And those guys are also successful. I saw at least 8 of the videos of the successful strikes on those Orlan or Zala drones with the help of the FPV. So it should work more massively, I would say. And the last variant is the Gepard air defense system, which should be installed somewhere near the airfield. Also, the similar variants are the Soviet-made OSA system or the short-range Shilka air defense system, but Gepard is better, I think. The problem is that Ukraine has just limited ammunition for Gepard tanks, and there are not many of the Soviet systems left in Ukrainian army. So I think that Ukraine should boost the idea to use the small airplanes to fight against the Russian drones and also FPV. Stoltenberg, what happened with him in this photo? Well, anyways, he announced that the NATO countries agreed to allocate to Ukraine around 40 billion United States dollars for the military support the next year. We're speaking about 2025, and those funds are barely enough to maintain Ukrainian army without any sort of the military support potentially from the United States, if some guy with an interesting haircut gets the power. But hopefully United States will continue to support Ukraine. Well, I'm almost sure about it, but everything might happen, we should expect everything. And let's speak about the possible peace initiatives around Ukraine. Because the NATO alliance is still closed for Ukraine, they always announce that their doors are open, but not this time. I think that Ukraine should have obtained this membership long time ago, and the war would have never started. But let's move to this cringy person. His name is Viktor Orban. He's the Prime Minister of Hungary. And there is some of the information leaked to the French press that the possible peace talks between Ukraine and Russia are possible at the end of this year. But where this reliable, let's say, information was taken from? Well, from the letter of the Hungarian Prime Minister himself. So we cannot say that it is reliable. Moreover, NATO officials were interviewed today by the journalists, and they expected the war might continue for at least 4 years more. It's the minimum term. They say Russia is behind everything, as you can see. So Russia is oriented to extend this war. They already put their economy on a war rails. Yes, probably the intensity will reduce gradually, but still the hot conflict will last for that long time, unfortunately. And there are no any peace initiatives now acceptable for Russia, except their own peace initiatives, which means capitulation of Ukraine. That's it. But nevertheless, kind of the interesting news are coming. So Ukraine seeks for a new summit, peace summit, with Russia. So Russia will take part in that. And Ukraine wants to start the summit before the elections in the United States, so before November. I wonder if Russia really would be presented out there. But if we look at this article, Ukraine wants to make it happen with Russia. The article says that another Trump presidency might put Ukraine at disadvantage. Well, probably, maybe that is why Ukraine is going to make it as soon as possible. But it doesn't mean that Ukraine will give up its territories. And you know what Russian alcoholic Medvedev said today about the peace deal? Well, it's the total cringe, but nevertheless, Medvedev is the deputy head of the Security Council of the Russian Federation. It's a very high position. Well, this is the quote from his speech. Even after signing the papers and accepting defeat of Ukraine, sooner or later some of the radicals in Ukraine will return to power. And then it will be the time to finally crush the reptile. At this moment, Russia will have to drive a long steel nail into the lid of the coffin of the Bandera quasi-state and destroy the remains of its bloody legacy and return the lands to the bosom of the Russian land. Wow, such a speech, but you understand the attitude of Russia for the peace agreements. What Medvedev says, Putin thinks. So the question is, do you really think that the peace agreements are possible with Russia? Even now they say that they don't really care and they want to occupy all of the Ukraine. From what I see, under the Putin's lead, there will be the war in Ukraine, unfortunately. So we need to consolidate to get rid of this regime, and the best variant to do it is to support the Ukrainian army and apply tremendous huge sanctions on Russia. The current sanctions are working, but those are not enough. Also, according to some data coming from the Western sources, the United States officials are against the secondary sanctions on those tankers which resell the Russian oil. Why? Well, simply because they're afraid that the fuel prices would rise, which is not good for the current White House administration. Guys, I do not make up this information or something. For example, here we have the article from the Ukrainian news. They rely on the article from the New York Times, they rely on some of the officials, as well as many other of the media sources say about it, that the United States of America fears new sanctions against the Russian Federation due to the election and Biden's campaign. So just some part of the Russian oil tankers are sanctioned, and Russia basically resells its oil using other countries' tankers. What they do, they refuel the oil just in the middle of Mediterranean Sea, close to the Greece coast, from their tankers to the other tankers, and later on they sell their oil for the much higher price, even for the Western countries. So I call it cynic, double standards, but the war politics, it's kind of inhumane. Every country, and in this case government, follows its own interests, political interests at first, and human lives are somewhere just behind. With this attitude, war might continue for a very, very long time. The United West is still not firm in its decisions and actions against Russia, the biggest threat for them. And the Russian dictator plus many other dictators understand that West is weak. They care about their politician goals rather than general strategy or winning in the war, and it is the weakest spot of West. Actually. Yeah, according to, for example, Bloomberg, there are around 50 of the Russian oil tankers which are no-go, they're under the sanctions and unable to operate. But it is not the whole Russian fleet. Still, it is able to operate in general. Still, Russia is able to sell its oil. It means that Western countries apply just partial sanctions on Russia at this particular stage. The Russian economy is still functional and it still has lots of the resources. I believe not forever. Still there's the trend for the Russian economy to decline, but the immediate action hasn't yet been done by the West to hit the Russian economy hard. And why do we also see that the current sanctions are not enough? Because the Russian missiles like Ha-101, which hit Ukraine recently, were equipped with some of the Western-made components. We know this information from the Financial Times. They made the investigation about the case, and the Ha-101 missiles are the newly produced missiles, which made just recently Russia, by the way, increase the production of those missiles by 7 of the times since the beginning of the war. So where did they get the components from? Well, United States, Thailand, China obviously, but we even have the names of the corporations which supplied those parts to Russia. Maybe via the third states, who knows, but it should be absolutely stopped. Yes, again, sanctions are good, but they're not working as they should. The big article about the case I posted on my Patreon page with some of the comments. So my friends, you may check it out if you are my Patreon supporter. Alright, NATO officials say that Russia is able to hire around 30,000 army personnel troops per month. It's a lot, you may say, but they also have tremendous losses on the front lines. I would say the same number, around 1,000 soldiers per day, and that brings us to the 30,000 soldiers per month. Again, it is happening only during the Russian offensive operations, then they use their mid-waves, and because of those losses, the situation in the Russian army is getting difficult. Because generals ordered to send soldiers on the front lines, the number of people. They don't care about the quality of those soldiers, and local commanders sometimes send the wounded personnel. It is happening for this month, for the last month for sure. There were numerous of the cases how the Russian wounded personnel recorded the videos complaining that they were sent to the front lines even with broken bones, burns and tremendous wounds from the shrapnel. It's crazy. Russian soldiers complain that it is definitely a critical situation. This guy says that they've lost half of the battalion in a single day for the single operation to get a certain height. Yes, they've took it, but they lost 200 troops, 200 army men. Again, there is the lack of training and lack of everything, but what they have is the good salary. Good for Russia, which mostly lives in poverty out of Moscow and St. Petersburg. So Putin's regime basically created this poverty, I think, for purpose. And now he might just throw a couple of the coins and there will be numerous of the volunteers who would like to earn some funds in the Russian army because they have never seen such a huge sum in their lives. And only for that reason Russia has many of the volunteers. And the quality of the training is very low, and that is also the reason why they have tremendous losses. Also, friends, one more time say that they'll provide the training for Ukrainian pilots on Mirage 2000. Great fighter jets and awesome news. Guys, let's go again to the situation on the ground. Unfortunately, I'm unable to show you some of the combat images. For that, please follow me on Telegram. It is for free, but I post there regularly some of the interesting stuff that I cannot post on YouTube. Here, unfortunately, what I must say that the situation for Ukraine near New York village is not so great, and Russia expands their bridgehead, totally eliminating the possibility for Ukraine to counterattack this kind of the narrow attack vector of the Russian army. So let's check out the timeline. Yesterday and today they moved from the side, taking this forest line and part of the field under control. Also, according to my information, the situation in New York itself is not that good. Russians definitely entered the city, and they tried to take building by building. So somehow they managed to break the Ukrainian defense, which was presented in the place. Maybe somehow they bypass it. Yeah, again, it's not a strategical success or something, just a tactical one, but yes, it's not good, then Ukraine loses the ground. Hopefully Ukraine obtains more tools to counteract this Russian offensive aggression, but at the same time, I monitor the Russian military bloggers plus their official propaganda media, and they're not in a good mood. They understand that even with the current losses, they're unable to reach their goals in Ukraine. They all say that they wanted Donetsk Oblast this year, but they also say that the summer comes to an end, and during the winter campaign it's absolutely impossible to get huge ground on the front lines, because even now they're not capable to strike massively, as for example it was in 2022. No, Ukraine is defending its ground. Yeah, sometimes leaving just tiny parts of it for Russia, but at the same time saving the army personnel, going to the other defense lines and others, but Russia has losses at every stage. So if Russia gets all of the Donetsk Oblast under control, there will be no Russian army available. The only place where Russia was more or less successful is here in Ocheretina after they occupied Avdiivka. By the way, Ukraine also did mistakes in defense, I already told you about those, but hopefully those will not happen again. Finally, there will be military advisors sent to Ukraine from the United States Army. I want it to happen as soon as possible because there are some of the generals in Ukrainian army who still have this Soviet mindset. Like for example General Sodol, who is really a butcher and was dismissed from his command position and hopefully will be prosecuted. And also United States generals or any sort of the Western generals will not work for the Russian intelligence, I think. Well, at least the probability of it is very low. It's the only frontline change. Unfortunately, there are no any Ukrainian counterattacks for today. However, Russians have to leave their positions in Kherson, and we have numerous of the videos showing how their positions were destroyed by simply wildfires. But I don't want to show you those videos where Russian soldiers just got cooked. But probably I'll share those kind of the videos with some of the cuts on my Telegram channel. So guys, what can I say? As usual, don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so, you help me a lot. And I want to wish you a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.